What's the biggest red flag you've seen on a first date? For me it was when she mentioned that she was not single but did in fact have a husband, but it is okay because he has been in jail for about 5 years and will not be released for at least 6 months. Not my date, just one I witnessed while sitting in a cafe with my laptop working. They both, maybe 25, look normal and sit down with a coffee. He buys and she seems happy enough. He then proceeds to talk like a non-stop fire hose for the next hour. I am not exaggerating if she didn't get to inject 8 consecutive syllables in at any point. It was a verbal brain dump of his entire fairly tepid life. This was a situation where more than one stranger looked at me with their back to the couple and made faces or mouthed something like "holy crap." We were playing mini golf and he was losing, so he screamed, all red-faced, and hit the ground multiple times with his golf club. He asked me out a second time and I said no. He claims he didn't know what he did wrong. He showed up to my house 3 hours later and stood outside my door for an hour and a half, trying to coerce my roommate to let him in, saying he had forgotten something inside. She didn't, as I was asleep, and she thought it was dodgy. I never told him where I lived. A guy got mad that I walked on the other side of a tree from the side he walked on. Like we were walking down the sidewalk, a tree was in the way, he went to the left of it and I went to the right of it. He was mad I didn't go left with him. I asked why he didn't come to the right with me if it was so important that we be on the same side. He did not like that response and I ended the date briefly thereafter. Oh Lord. I went on a date with a guy who admitted he fell asleep on his baby while drinking and the baby was killed by accident, so he has manslaughter on his record. Like legit. This happened, and the date only got weirder when I went to nope out. He followed me to the bar where I was practicing with friends for a pool league. He proceeded to get drunk, puff his chest up, and ask my guy friends why they were talking to his girl. I was mortified. He tried to correct me on the pronunciation of my own last name. Already drunk when I got there. Had a bag of possessions with him because he had just been released from the hospital, and had taken the bus there. Finished the last 2 inches of my beer. Wanted a ride to the place he was house sitting. The best part was saying he thought we really hit it off and could see us moving in together in a few months if everything went well. I didn't know it was a date. I'd gone to happy hour with another department in the company, and 2 weeks later one woman from there said they were doing another one and asked if I'd like to go. I showed up and it was just her roommate and her roommate's boyfriend, and they had a table for 4 in the restaurant area of the sports bar. She told me everyone else was running late, so they got a table to get a bit to eat first. I thought it was odd, but then the roommate mentioned something about it being their first double date. Nobody else from work showed up, lol. Edit, for everyone asking, no, we didn't end up dating. I'd already ordered an appetizer and drink before I realized what was up, so I stayed for that, then paid my bill and left. I had no interest in dating her as there were multiple red flags before that, but the question asked specifically about the first date. My first date in 6 years after getting out of a long-term relationship. Asked what she did for a living, she simply dismissed it and didn't tell me. I thought it was strange, but I didn't think much of it. I was not super confident, but I felt that the date was going great. Spent the night together, but she left before I woke up the next morning. She forgot her watch and asked me to stop by her work to return it. Turns out she was a co-worker to my ex-girlfriend and they hate each other. God. He started proselytizing at me, saying that he found God and traded in his drug-addicted past to have a relationship with Christ. Honestly, that didn't weird me out too bad, as I was raised Christian and that was pretty par for the course. But it was after that. He started talking about One Piece and comparing himself to Luffy, I think. I don't know, never seen the show and never will, and basically said after converting to a God-honoring life that he gained Superman/Luffy-esque superpowers for real. But that he would be willing to give them all up if I married him. After we got married, he said we would take a bunch of orphans on a trip to Disneyland to give them the best experience ever, but not adopt them. He also lectured to me about abortion despite having never brought it up. Actually, I didn't really talk much at all during this, he mainly talked at me. He didn't even bother to ask if I was religious before trying to convert me, and reminded me it was a sin to kill fetuses. This was all during a game of tennis, my first time ever playing, and we were just volleying back and forth, and he kept ragging on me for my form and said I wasn't any good. After that he made me go to the deli with him, despite having told him I was a vegetarian, and made me sit down and listen to shitty EDM on his new, bulky-ass generic brand headphones he raved on and on about. And showed me the layout of his new online store he was about to launch that was going to be revolutionary. He sold stick-on LED lights and lava lamps. I ghosted him after that, but unfortunately, he knew where I worked. That's where he asked me out, and stalked me. One time I was smoking behind the grocery store next to my work, after I closed, with a platonic male friend. At this grocery store is where the guy worked. He found me out back and threatened to beat my friend with a baseball bat. I started screaming, he dropped the bat and ran away. There's honestly so much more to say here, but that should give a little taster. Thankfully we hadn't gone out yet, but first phone convo with a guy yielded that he had 3 kids, the youngest was 3. One he didn't think was his, and he wasn't allowed to see the other ones because his ex claimed he was abusive. He also wasn't paying his child support, so he had a bunch of debt from that. I made some dumb excuse about having to let the dog out, and that was the last convo. Went on a first date after hitting it off with her on a night out. Within the first hour she told me she was highly judgmental and high maintenance, bonus points for honesty, but no thanks. Extra info, she was undoubtedly a very intelligent and attractive woman, however the vibe was just a bit off for me. Oh, she also kept referring to herself as a shark in her professional life. Date 2 never happened because I just felt like it wasn't needed, plus we are both adults, and I'm a strong believer in not wasting my time or that of others. I was at a restaurant and saw one of my guy friends. He was like a brother to me. He walked over and said hey. I introduced him to my date. After my friend left, he literally only stayed at our table for 1 minute. My date goes, I just want to be clear, but I don't approve of you having guy friends. We didn't speak again after that date. He mentioned how several of his exes have accused him of rape. But they're just crazy B-words lying on him. Bruh. He was a cop, BTW, and I'll never make that mistake again. Talked about his ex the entire date. Gave me the whole rundown about how they met, to the ups and downs of their relationship, their sex life, birth controls they used, and how they broke up. He also read me some of their old texts and said, do you think this means she still likes me? And get this, they had been broken up for 2 years. He also yelled at me when I told him I didn't want a second date because of this.